Well, he's just making stuff up, but most importantly, the President of the United States is calling for the imprisonment of a private citizen, as he's done for a whole lot of people who criticize him. That is not acceptable in this country.
Moments ago, I spoke exclusively to House Oversight Chairman Trey Gowdy, who is fighting to get his hands on those memos and release them. You have been trying, obviously, to get these memos, as we said, and the letter that Rod Rosenstein wrote back to you about why he can't turn them over quite yet is here. Let's put it up on the screen for folks at home to see. He said one or more of the memos, he's referring to the letters that James Comey wrote, may be related to our ongoing investigation. It may contain classified information and may report confidential presidential communications, so we have a legal duty to evaluate the consequences of providing access to them. What do you think about that, given the fact that James Comey said there was nothing classified in those memos?
I wish he had shared that advice with Jim Comey before he went on national television and recalled every conversation he's ever had with President Trump. So I don't want the drama. I want the documents. I've actually read them, Martha. I read them months ago, which is why I think it's really important that you get to see them and your viewers get to see them. Look, Comey's talking about them. He included it in his Senate testimony. He's talking a lot about them. Well, everyone should know what exactly he memorialized after his conversations with the president.
And as you say, you're one of the few people who has actually read these memos. So is there anything classified in there? Is there anything top secret in there?
I can think of two sentences in all the memos I read that would be appropriately redacted. But having said that, DOJ can redact whatever they want that they think is part of an ongoing probe or somehow is classified. What I'm most interested in, which is what Comey's talking about, there's no need for that to be classified. So Comey gets to talk about it, but no one else does. And that's just not fair to your viewers, and it's not fair to the president, frankly.
All right. So when you take a look at some of what he has been saying with regard to all of this, let's play the soundbite from the interview where he gives his reasoning for why he did not convene a grand jury in the Hillary Clinton case.
And to those who say you should have brought Hillary Clinton before a grand jury?
We would prefer, with a subject of an investigation, to do an informal interview. A lot more flexibility there. They're still required to tell the truth.
Your thoughts?
He's right. You can't lie, but that would come as really interesting legal counsel to all the people who have been hauled in front of grand juries that the FBI really prefers to do it another way.
I'm sure they'd all prefer a more flexible venue that Hillary Clinton got.
Well, I'll tell you what they'd like. They'd love to have Cheryl Mills and all the other potential fact witnesses sitting in there while you're being interviewed. I have never heard of that before. So what he means by flexibility, I think the right word is unprecedented. It's never been done before.
Yeah, I mean, I would love for him to be pressed on that question of what exactly he means by flexibility and why it would get the FBI to their ends of determining whether or not there was any wrongdoing done in that case. I want to draw your attention to something else that came out on Friday in the Inspector General's report with regard to Andrew McCabe. And it goes to the question of whether or not James Comey is in any sort of trouble for leaking to his reporter friend, which he mentioned in the introduction here. And here is what it says in the IG report with regard to Andrew McCabe. It says McCabe argues that Comey, quote, would have every incentive to distance himself from this disclosure. It goes on to say, due to McCabe's belief that the OIG, the Inspector General, is reviewing Comey's disclosure of other information to the media. So Andrew McCabe apparently is under the impression that Comey is part of the Inspector General's investigation.
I wouldn't be surprised if he were. I mean, Michael Horowitz is looking at all of what happened in 2016, and there were lots of leaks. I mean, Comey gave one of his memos to a law professor. So I think Horowitz is looking at everything in 2016, and anyone at the Bureau who made an unauthorized leak should take note of what happened to Andy McCabe.
So is that potentially perilous for James Comey, who, as you point out, is telling his story? I think he's got 11 interviews coming up in the next 10 or 12 days.
I think what's most perilous for Jim Comey, quite frankly, Martha, is he's written a book about morality and ethics and truth, and he's engaged in more relativism, I think, than any book author I have seen in a long time. Now, keep in mind, he says President Trump lied. He's therefore unfit for office. But he's really proud of the fact that his wife and daughter supported the other candidate, who also has trouble with the truth. And then when it comes to Andy McCabe, he's a victim. So all three engage in the same conduct. One's unfit to be president. One he hopes is the president, and the other is his friend and a victim. That's relativism, so that is antithetical to ethics.
And he makes it very clear from the get-go that all of his decisions were made with the assumption that Hillary would win, that he framed his decisions in that pattern, which I can't understand why that was relevant to any of the work that he would have been doing. And it begs the question, how would he have done things differently if he thought the other outcome of President Trump was going to be the case, none of which should have any bearing on what he's doing. I want to ask you about the memo that Mark Meadows has sent to you, asking to clarify whether or not some of the newer revelations in these struck page text messages point to greater coordination than has been admitted between the FBI and the DOJ on what they were going to find with regard to Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, Mark's done great work, and so has Johnny Ratcliffe and others. I read Mark's letter. He shared it with me before it went public, which I appreciate him doing. I'm going to send it to the Inspector General. I'm going to send it to the Department and the FBI. To the extent that there is an allegation that false testimony was given, Congress is not the entity to investigate that. I think it fits most neatly within what Horowitz is doing now, which is looking at how unprecedented this investigation was in 2016.
Congressman Trey Gowdy, thank you very much. Always good to see you, sir. Have a good night.
Yes, ma'am. You too.
Our thanks to him. And now these live pictures of the Prime Minister of Japan and his wife, and President Trump and his wife. Let's listen in.
But we have had talks at the highest.